Welcome, everybody. It's technically good afternoon, is it? All right, almost good afternoon. My name is Victoria DiFrancesco Soto, and I am the Dean of the Clinton School of Public Service. And I am absolutely delighted to welcome you here today to Sturgis Hall for Women's Voices, Activism, and Art. This is a conversation that is going to be featuring artists whose work you can see over in the Clinton Presidential Library for the Women's Voices, Women's Votes, and Women's Rights exhibit. And we have three of the artists with us today. We have Hollis Chatelain, Shin-hee Chin, and Sarah Trail. Here at the Clinton School, we know that social and political change work can express itself in any number of ways and in any different number of sectors. Looking across our history, some of the more powerful of those actions for social change have come from the arts. From the folk music that was the soundtrack to the anti-war movement of the 1960s, to the graphic arts that expressed the anger toward the HIV/AIDS policies of the 1980s, to the gorgeous murals responding to the murder of Mr. George Floyd. As we see in the Women's Voices, Women's Votes, Women's Rights exhibit, fiber art is another powerful mode of expression about politics, both in terms of critiquing problematic practices along with expressing a hope for a different future. It's wonderful to have these artists, these activists here at the Clinton Presidential Center, a place where we collectively work to inspire public service and train our next generation of public service leaders. Today's program is part of the new Clinton Presidential Center Presents series in partnership with the Clinton Foundation, with the Clinton School of Public Service. It is sponsored by the National Archives Foundation. The discussion will be curated by the guest curator of the Women's Voices, Women's Votes, Women's Rights exhibit, Dr. Allida Black. Dr. Allida Black is a historian and an advisor to former Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. She is author of 10 books and dozens of articles on Eleanor Roosevelt, the evolution of human rights, and women's political history. She's editor emeritus of the Eleanor Roosevelt Papers, a documentary history of Roosevelt's efforts to construct and apply the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Allida is a force. She is someone I am proud to call my friend and who I am so fortunate to get to work with. Today is going to be a treat. Welcome back to Little Rock, Allida. I'll let you take it away.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy that you were here today because it is just my joy to celebrate these three women. And I met them virtually over the phone and in Sarah's case through email and a few Zooms to ask them to take a risk with me. They stepped up to the plate. They not only knocked it out of the ballpark, they knocked it around the equator. And we all developed a friendship based on trust, shared conviction, and a determination not only to elevate and celebrate their art, but to elevate and celebrate the voices of women who have been either silenced in textbooks or obscured by their, I'll be generous, well-intended male companions who sometimes took credit for their work. And so what I asked these three women to do, although they were already ahead of me in this effort, was to pick women off of a list that I gave them to interrogate their history and to come up with their individualized understanding of what the power and the courage these women grabbed to do their work and convey it in their art. And in Sarah Trail's just, I don't have the word for it, jaw-dropping vision, she was able, through this art form, to help a new generation of young people who may not have the Allida in-your-face vocabulary, but have their own sense of justice and determination to build a world, grab this art form and make it their own, and not only challenge, but give comfort to the challenged. So it is my joy to introduce these three women. And the first to my right is Sarah Trail, who I want you to know had copyrighted sewing patterns when she was in elementary school. You know, she started sewing before school started. She has a master's in education from Harvard. But what is just totally extraordinary to me about Sarah Trail is the vision that she had to found the Social Justice Sewing Academy. And so we will send you links to this, but I'm telling you, I'm giving you homework. Every person that's in this room has to visit all three websites because we are going to give you a hangnails version of their art. And with Sarah's art, it's not just Sarah's art, it's the art of young people and at-risk populations that she's worked with all over the United States. It's an extraordinary joy to have her here. Next is my great friend, my great new and forever friend, Shin-hee Chin, who was born in South Korea, came here, is a jaw-dropping artist, teaches art at a university in Kansas. But what I want to say about Shin-hee, and I have her whole formal biography here. But what I want you to know is she has tackled some of the most intricate, painful memories of not only America, but the world, and put them before us in textile art that seduces you into understanding the experiences and identifying the experiences of the people who she honors with her art. Hollis Chatelain. Okay, well, she's from Hillsboro, North Carolina. The first time I called her, we realized that my best friend was a friend of Hollis's, so we had that in common. The first thing I heard is she was in Hillsboro. I said, oh my God, do you know Elizabeth Matheson? Okay, so I go to see Hollis. She's a gardener. Her husband is gorgeous. Her dog was in my lap. Her studio is a portrait in diversity and craft. And when you get to know Hollis, sometimes what shows up in the mail to you are the best bay leaves you have ever cooked with in your life, or her own spice mixes, which are as intricate as her art. And so that is my somewhat controversial but loving and heartfelt introduction of these three women. So the way it's going to work is I'm going to ask one question. Sarah's going to take it, then he's going to take it, then Hollis is going to answer it. I'm going to ask them a second one, and in the second one, you're going to get an explosion of art, because you are going to see the courage and the majesty of their intricate work. So my first question, Sarah, to you is, and it has to be different because she got this at the age of 5. Sarah, how, you have so many multiple talents, all these different artistic talents, in addition to your incredible skill as an educator. Why did you decide to embrace this art form and use it to address issues of justice?
I would say due to the lack of equity. I think as we looked at this art form, it was
Shin-hee?
I grew up in South Korea and came to United States. I had a degree in South Korea, but once I came to United States, I have to give up my mother tongue to communicate. And that was very hard. And then I became a mother, and also giving up your career was very hard. But becoming a mother and losing your own language gave me the other opportunity. I found the art became my voice.
Wow. Hollis?
So, is it working? Oh, it
Yeah.
is. Okay. So, for me, the reason that I started doing this work is I got involved in activism when I was very young. When I was 12, I was already going to places and having, giving people petitions to sign about the keeping our environment, and it kind of morphed into art. And then when I I just worked and kept trying to express myself through the art. And then from there, textiles kind of chose me because I lived in Africa for many years and I fell in love with the fabrics. And so I started making quilts. And then when I moved back to the United States, I missed the people so much that I started teaching myself to paint the people on textiles. And one thing led to another. Then I started having dreams that were statement dreams. And if I didn't make the work, what ended up happening is I'd have the dream again and again until I finally made the pieces. And so I think we all have really three very different backgrounds, but all of us are driven by wanting to bring across these issues and portray them in our art.
Thank you all. You know, you all have addressed so many vital challenges that the world must address, whether it's gun violence, whether it's the images of war and peace, the discrimination of immigration, police misconduct, but you haven't shied away. And what you three have in common, I think, as a non-fabric art person, is that you took quilting, which we all think of as what our grandmothers made us, and we have in the cedar chests at the foot of our beds. And you turned it in to tapestries with thread and passion that are equal to the tapestries of any great male artist. I defy you to go to the Sistine Chapel or look at Raphael's painting, The Portrait of Athens, and try to dismiss their work, because the intricacy of this, the invitingness of this, the intent of it is extraordinary. And so how did you decide to take on this medium and fight to redefine it and own it when people want to put you in a box? And I say this because it took me, we worked on this project together for 3 years. As Hollis knows better than anybody, it took me 3 years to stop saying quilt and saying fabric art. I tried tapestries. I tried art quilt. I tried every vocabulary to try to evoke this power. And so why did you decide to take this on? And Sarah, you started, talking about it was the space and the tools and the equipment for communities that did not have access to it. But why did you decide to do this? And can you please talk about the evolution of the Social Justice Academy from the closing quilt in our exhibit to the banners that you've made, to the portraits that you've made, and how you have used your education tools not just to illustrate, but to comfort?
Yeah, so I would say for me, Ethiopian and race, I can pinpoint my great-great-grandmother was a 13-year-old Ethiopian slave bought by a 37-year-old white man who raped her. That's how my family came here. And not only were raised in Ethiopia, they were also cultures. When we look at G's Bend and we look at the transatlantic forced migration that has brought so many people over, to a new country, they started, sewing really intrinsic to Black, not just sewing, quilting really intrinsic to Black life. It's really intrinsic to the beginning of Black life. So coming from, grandparents and great-grandparents in the South, my mom was trying to sew, my grandma sewed. Not only did they sew, they would hand quilts, well just kind of knowing that, like, you know, I came from that lineage, my grandma was so, I see things, people with antiques, particularly coming from scraps. I think the resourcefulness and using, you know, old clothes, old dresses, really to just hodgepodge piece quilts together that really come from, you know, like they're not buying garbage, they're not buying the people, you know, the boutiques that I like to go out and pick out. Really recognizing that you can make art from struggle, you can make art from nothing, and you can be resourceful and, you know, create a blanket to, you know, keep your kids warm, you know, when you really have absolutely nothing. So I think kind of keeping in context, you know, what Black American quilting and how it's evolved into, it's really interesting that the dichotomy of who was a quilter, you know, like in the early 1900s to who is a quilter now. And I think there's almost been, I would argue, a gentrification of quilting to a lot of the originators can no longer afford to do it. It's a luxury at this point. Fabric is $16 a yard. Like if you look at who quilts now, if you Google quilter, the stereotype of what you're going to see is not at all as correlated to the Black community as it once was. And I think like a lot of things, you know, art forms can get taken. You can go into gentrification, you can go into white flight, you can go into private schools, you can go into, like, there's just a lot. But moving outside of that, I think what inspired me to really kind of work with this art form is really reclaiming the Maxine Waters and reclaiming my time, reclaiming art form that I think generationally we have a lot of history. And I think as young, like Black millennials and Black Gen Z, I think often our history might be forgotten. I mean, in the sense of we might not know that. Like I can trace my lineage, you know, it's been pretty great to me, and my family, you know, has documented a lot that we know. They were born on a plantation in Alabama called the Cox Plantation. And like we know our history really well. Not everyone's afforded that privilege. Not everyone has this story in their family to document it. But I think we might unpack, you know, what soul means to the Black community, what soul means to the American community, and really the connection that soul has to the South. I think everyone has familiarity with someone. When we're born, you know, kids are wrapped in blankets. When you know, in Egypt, when you die, you're wrapped in fabric. From mummification to being the first thing, everyone's touching clothes. I know that I work with kids that have never used a paintbrush in their life in their high school, never touched clay in their life in their high school. Some people live and die without ever using some of the art forms, but you can never go a lifetime without using fabric. Fabric is a medium that we're all familiar with. We wear it every day. It's a medium that, you know, whether we're donating to Goodwill, or whether we're buying fabric in the fabric shop, we all use fabric. So when you introduce a medium that everyone's been comfortable touching, it creates a different level of proximity that can often mitigate the barriers of fear a lot of young people have. I think, and as you say, you know, we started with working with young kids on, you know, making full art quilts, teaching them how to embroider, teaching them how to sew. And some of the barriers long term machine maintenance came up. So that let's use and create an intergenerational community of having mentors, you know, having MTG mentors, you know, Martin Football, having soccer mentors, just having book mentors come and break up this next generation, you know, home ec and cut from schools. We don't have access to sewing anymore. So it is really, we don't have a grandmother or a family friend or, you know, a parent who afford sewing classes. Most millennials and people don't have the option to ever learn how to sew. And sewing is far much more than just simplicity patterns, clothes, and books. It can be art, it can be upholstery, it can be drapery. There's just so many avenues once you really learn how to sew. So I think in using and mitigating the privilege that I have, whether it's a network or a socioeconomic standing or an education level, I think my goal is really to limit some of the barriers to entry to allow the next generation access to sewing. And not every kid is going to become the next Lisa Butler, but some kids get that spark in their mind started, and with the right mentorship and resources, who knows what they can become. It's really about just investing in the textile arts for the next generation that really doesn't have access.
Thanks, Sarah. And I want to say, if I can assume your voice for 5 seconds, to say what's on the monitor beside you. What you see over there is a sample of one of the quilts that Sarah's students have made. And the other part of it that you will see is an extraordinary portrait of Trayvon Martin that helped give Sarah the impetus to start the Social Justice Sewing Academy. And Sarah, if you could just briefly talk about the gifts that your community has made to those who have lost loved ones from gun violence. And I want you to look at the intricacy of that Trayvon Martin portrait and imagine that that one of your family members have been killed by gun violence. And students and Sarah, whom you have never met, made this and send it to you as a testament to that person's memory and the activism that evokes to create a movement to stop gun violence. Briefly, Sarah, can you do that?
Yeah, give me 60 seconds. In a nutshell, I think that the quilting community is a really generous community that rallies around a lot of tragedy. When the Pulse Massacre happened, quilters made quilts. When veterans retired, quilters made quilts. When police people get killed, quilters made quilts. And I think in 2020, when we were seeing back-to-back Breonna Taylor, Mark Roberts, George Floyd, really seeing this slaughtering of so many lives being stolen from society, a lot of kids reached out. They were like, who's making quilts for these families? And unlike a natural disaster, we're very concentrated. This is happening, obviously across America. After listening to the kids, I was like, well, let's do something. We reached out to those families that were so sorry that they lost their loved ones. A quote would never bring them back. We would like to offer to form solidarity and focus to memorialize their loved ones. And we have families with the boxes of their loved ones' clothes. We've got graduation gowns, we've got hoodies, we've got t-shirts, we've got favorite beads. And we take those memorials of their loved favorite items and we give it to a quilter who cuts it up and turns it into a custom keepsake memory quilt for these families. And they've emailed and cried, and they've really said it's one of the most touching gifts they received. Because if your loved one gets killed, you're not just going to donate their clothes, you're going to want to keep their clothes, you're going to want to remember their scent. So to turn it into a quilt you can hang on the wall, put on a bed, or give to their kids is a keepsake that's really priceless.
Thanks, Sarah. That just sounds inadequate, but, thanks, Sarah. Shin-hee, when I was preparing myself to call you, to ask, to beg you
Yes.
to participate in this exhibit, because none of us knew each other. Our mutual friend, Allison Wilbur, who was the unsung heroine of this conversation, said, you have to meet Shin-hee. So I immediately bought 2 of your books. And they blew me away because your ability to take your Korean heritage, your American perspective, and create insights into what that journey is like for you, but also for women who were not that lucky, is really extraordinary. And so what now I'm going to do is I'm going to shut up, and Shin-hee is going to walk you through photographs of her art that she brought to share with you.
Thank you. As I said, that art became my voice. It started in a graduate program that I did painting and I did some sculpture form. And for my graduate show, I need to spend money for the solo show. And I didn't have a lot of money. My husband was studying and my kids were little. So out of my functional, and then also my kids' old clothes became my resource. And so fiber became my resource and my voice. And after that, when I create my artwork, that one immigrant woman create the voice, then it can be shared to other people. So I started in that way, and then no matter what kind of background you are, fiber is very easy access, and for me, recyclable, and so you cannot buy brand new brand new painting materials, but you can buy secondhand store or your own clothes become an art medium. So the medium became my voice. And when I said that I'm going to use my voice to share my experience to other background, I was aware of my own self that the least, the lowest, and so I chose the people who was either victims or the people who, or the other way, people who sacrificed their life to other people. So um, I can just show one of the example of a September 11 piece. That it is two scrolls, and when September 11 happened, we were in Maryland, and my husband is ready for his school, and then I just watched the news for the weather, and then in front of my eye, Twin Towers collapsed. And then my kids came home because we are about 30 minutes away, Pentagon. So when my kids came home, I feel helpless. I cannot give a refuge to even my kid. And so that makes me think about something that commemorate this event as a mother. And so I searched the idea or images, but when we moved to Michigan, we found the book at the library. It's called Portrait of Grief. And New York Times interviewed 1,910 victims, and then they have stories. And the stories, when I read that, I wanted to make an artwork. So I drew individual faces with the ballpoint pen, very humble medium, on the fabric. And I make an order to alphabetical order from last name A to Z, and create two twin towers. And so the twin towers collapsed, and then the victims are not here anymore, but their memories on the window. And then I show the twin towers. And so somehow, whenever the victims, I always think about not only an artist, but as a mother. And then art making is about the caring for the soul.
Okay. I think it's kind of interesting how we have all come different ways toward the fabric. I have no background in sewing. My family, my mother and sister could sew. I could not sew at all. So when I was in Africa, you just went to the tailor and asked if he would make your clothing because you didn't have stores. But when I was there, I would just hang out with the tailors and talk to them. And I realized they were giving the leftover pieces of fabric away or throwing it away. And I said, what are you doing with that fabric? And they said, oh, we'll give it to the mechanics to wipe up oil. And I said, no, give it to me. Give it to me. And that's how I got started in making quilts. Is I was taking the leftover pieces that were going to be thrown away, and they were so beautiful that I started teaching myself to sew and making quilts with them. Then when I moved back to the States, I had been teaching drawing and I had been a photographer. And what I missed the most about Africa were the people. And I wanted to portray what I had been drawing and what I had been photographing. And that were these people that meant so much to me, my friends. And so I taught myself to paint with dyes. And that's how I got started in my large portraits. And then from there, that was when I started having the dreams. And I realized that these were really about the social issues, what was going on in the United States. The first one that I dreamed was called Precious Water, and that's the yellow one. And I dreamed that in 2000. I had always had dreams all my life that were very vivid, but when I started having these statement dreams, I realized that I needed to make them or they would come back again and again. And it was my way of expressing myself and bringing attention to these different issues that affect so many of us in so many ways. And so I think I had a progression from first teaching myself how to sew with scraps, then I had taught myself how to draw, and so then teaching myself how to paint, and then to the social activism. And when I first started doing it, I didn't think of it as social activism. I was just doing what I needed to do, bringing my point across. And back then, and nobody was doing it, back in the late 90s, it just wasn't really as popular. So I'm happy to see that so many more people are bringing attention to the issues with art.
Sarah, with all that's on your plate and all the different communities, I'm going to ask you a two-part question. Could you please share here how you decided to create the Social Justice Sewing Academy? I mean, how did you get the students? You know, what was your dream for it to do? For what impact did you expect it to have? And what are you all working on now in terms of how your artists' venues have changed and your technique has changed? I mean, just let the world know the glory of the Social Justice Sewing Academy, to which I am very proud to contribute, I must add.
Thank you so much, Dr. Black. You've been a phenomenal support. I think when you started SJSA, it really goes back to the access I had, again, coming from growing up in California suburbs. My parents afforded the opportunity for me to go to quilt classes. At the time I was 12, I was taking orders on everything, custom wedding dresses. So I had a lot of experience exposure. Because of that, we have a lot of success here. Like I got to see Activism, I wrote a national published book, all of my ninth grade. I had 2 fabric collections in middle school. And while I was awarded the opportunity to teach kids how to sew, Joanne became to go everywhere. The problem was the sewing classes that I was providing were still $150. So because of that, only middle class kids had programs. So it started with I was sewing for young people. I was doing that. There's still a socioeconomic barrier. When I went to UC Berkeley, and really the campus was I made that book with Trayvon Martin. And I entered it in the local quilt shows, I gave it to local fabric stores, and all of the spaces that had loved me. I was like, hey, my academic dress, I can make an apron, quilt shop, I'll put it in the window. We love to support what you do for your young person. So I made that book with Trayvon in all of the local quilt shops that we don't want to show that quilt. The local quilt shows that we're not going to accept that quilt. This is all in 2012 when we just converted. And I think for me, it comes from, a place like, why would you not accept this book? My commitment was butterflies, birds, flowers, and all of the other books. The one time I made a quilt that had a message. The one time I made a quilt that had a purpose. The quilt world was shunned. Not only the quilt, but they were like, you got to go back to making aprons and promises. I think that was really big wake up call. My oldest was still political development. And the sense of, I don't want to just make art quilts, or I don't want to make quilts, I want to make quilts with a purpose and a bigger calling. And I think when I made that book with Trayvon, the reason Trayvon was so impactful for me is he's born February 4th, 1995, and I was born February 19th, 1995. So he was 14 days to the T older than me. So I think proximity and age really big closeness that a lot of other murders around the country haven't necessarily resonated in that same degree. So when I made that book, I showed that book, a lot of other young people were like, I'd like to make a quilt about gentrification. My brother's been killed by police. Can I make a quilt about him? And everyone else had their own lived experiences that they wanted to bring the art form to. So I talked to UC Berkeley. I got a seed grant that allowed me to buy sewing machines, fabric, and host a space for a summer program. And we had over 60 kids apply to want to come join the summer program. And we had space for like 50. So I changed the hours around so we could accommodate all 60. But really it just showed kids do want to have access to sewing and art instruction. They're just not in spaces. Like sewing and free is almost like a hot ice cube. It doesn't really happen. Sewing isn't typically associated with free programs. It's just too expensive unless we have a restorative model where people can donate and people can reuse and people can upcycle. Sewing can be free. We just have to change the mindset and shift from the capitalistic lens of over consumerism that we typically do when it comes to the sewing industry. But really, SJSA was created with intentional impact to want to break down the barriers, mitigate the lack of access, have it where if any kid wants to learn how to make an art quilt, they can. If any kid wants to learn how to upholster, they can. Embroider, they can. Like just make sewing free. We've got to kind of limit the hoops that kids have to jump through with a sewing starter pack consisting of a rotary cutter and a ruler and a seam ripper and all those shears and things that, not all kids have access to affording. Not all parents are going to invest in their young person doing an art form. So I think really the impact is to not just teach kids how to sew, but really teach kids how to use art to say something. Art can't necessarily impact or change policies overnight, but art can spark, a spark in a heart that who might, be a policymaker. Art can change hearts. And I think when hearts can get changed, it has a trickle down effect to other systems and policies. Kids making art about the pink tax, kids making art about their impact on mass incarceration, or their impact on gentrification, or their firsthand experience with school inequities. It's interesting to go into a high school in a really affluent area and then go to a high school in Baltimore and see the disparities. They're all young people. They're all going to public schools. But why does this public school have MacBooks and home ec and AP calculus and 16 AP classes when this high school in Baltimore has 2? Like, those disparities have an impact, and you can see those domino effects. So I think when kids, really start making art about their lived experience, while, a kid could be like, we're gonna have, an open mic, I want to talk to adults. Adults might not show up, but when there's an art show, you can definitely get an audience. And then when they have that audience, they can use art as a microphone to share their lived experiences and really just have their voice heard. I think that the starting quote that started SGSA is, there's no such thing as the voiceless. There's only the deliberately silenced or the preferably unheard. And youth are often those latter 2 groups. They're often either told to be quiet, listen to the adults because they have the degree and they know what's best, or they're just ignored. And I think SGSA is really to give a microphone to the ignored, which is often young people.
Well, I have to bring Eleanor Roosevelt into the conversation because Sarah just unpacked one of the greatest of Eleanor's statements, and that is when she dedicated the National Museum of Art in Washington, she fought to have the collection not just be classical, but to be folk art, to support the WPA art, because she says what Sarah just said, which is art gives people the power to express what words cannot. And I think that's the thread that runs, all pun intended, that runs through these 3 women. And Shin-hee, what are you working on now that is carrying your challenge to the world forward?
Thank you. My focus was gradually changed, that I worked for the faces of women, the faces of human that leave a mark in the world that it doesn't necessarily show in the newspaper, but their life is meaningful, and I work with their faces. And then it takes a lot of empathy and then tiresome. And so I wanted to think about slightly different view. Maybe I didn't have in my slides, but as a mother, I also think about the environment, the safe place to live. And so my focus is gradually changed to the nature. That is another thing that we can talk about, but when I'm thinking about the nature, it's not about reproducing nature, it just shows the nature. So that is not my word, that is Paul Klee is an artist that art does not reproduce the visible, but it makes visible. And so my heart goes to the next generation, the place that they are going to live. And so nature and environment became my interest. But still, I'm working on the pieces about social justice and climate changes. Those are all somehow together, but the interest and the theme is slightly shifting, but common thread is a fiber. And fiber and then fabric is non-traditional art medium, but it makes women power, that empower women, that woman who doesn't have a background in art, but still they can make something with their hand. That is very powerful. And then it also give a voice to many different races, different background, different places in the world. And so it kind of ties and unites together through the fabric. It's a still, I'm working on that, but it's gradually changing. Yeah.
Well, I think that's so interesting, Shin-hee, because it's reflected in the women that you picked for your quilt, your art piece. See, I always mess it up. It just takes my breath away. So we have to come up with a new word that Allida will remember. But because I just want to call their work tapestries. I mean, I just want people to know that, yes, it's fabric art, but it is intricate. It is painful to make. It takes months to do this work, you know? So I just want to celebrate it to the rooftops. And with Hollis, I mean, the first thing I saw of Hollis's was, my first thing I saw of Sarah's was Trayvon Martin. The first thing I saw of Shin-hee were just these extraordinary kimono type tributes that were so intricate. It just like, I could not turn away from them. And as you can tell, I am so not a fashion person, you know, that the fact that I was riveted by these and the stories of, you know, the women that wore them really made me look at the history of immigration in a different way. And with Hollis, well, the first thing I saw of Hollis was this extraordinary portrait of this young girl holding a sign that said, "Girls are strong." Hollis will tell me she made it for the ERA. I am totally convinced she did it for Title IX, and I don't care if you did it for the ERA. I have told athletes all over the world that you did this for Title IX. So, you know, so what are you working on now, and how does that relate to your determination to make fabric art a call to action?
So for almost 30 years, I've been making people. And I've done some environmental pieces, but people are what I'm really drawn to. And now I'm seeing a difference in the world of textiles, and I'm seeing more and more people who are doing people. You didn't before, but now I kind of feel like I'm passing the baton on to other people to carry some of these messages forth. But I had a vision about a year ago about animals. And so right now I am working on a piece that will have 21 endangered animals in it, and it will be 21 feet wide. And so I don't have a picture of it here because I don't have any done yet, but I like to work really big. And a lot of you have seen my work. It's not small, it's really big. And so I'm still gonna do people because I can't help myself. And I'm still gonna do the issues, especially with women, because that's what I've done the most of in the last 25 years. But I'm going to do some about animals that are endangered and our environment. And so it's not that I'm consciously shifting, but I think that my dreams are. And so when my dreams shift, I have to follow my dreams.
And your talent escalates. All of your talents escalate. I mean, I got a text from Hollis last week that said, "Look what I'm working on now." And it was a gorilla. And I just looked at it and I said, my spouse, Judy, I said, "Judy, look at this. Hollis is doing this." And Judy said to me, "I can feel the fur." You know, and that's what I texted her back. And I mean that because all of these women, all the work that they do are to create relationships between the courage and the defiance and the ultimate commitment to equity and justice in a way that won't let you blink and turn away. And that's why I asked them if they would be a part of the exhibit. Because after we talked within 5 minutes on the phone, we all knew that we wanted to dare to risk their craft and my craft. God knows I cannot sew. I mean, I'm doing good to do a button, and that's assuming that the button is smaller than the hole. But, you know, I'm a pretty good historian. And so how can we combine our skills, our professional expertise, our commitment to practice our craft with a non-judgmental but honest way to say, this is the world we live in, this is what we've learned or should learn from the people who came before us. And if history has been turned into a series of Jeopardy questions, you know, how can we get people who turn off from history or who turn off from politics to understand that politics is not about systems. It's about people who come together to build communities. Communities that are often threatened by weather, by science, by bias, by region, by race. But we have to come together to figure out how to talk to each other and how to learn from each other and how to take the courage of the women and the man, Frederick Douglass, who is in this exhibit, to carry forward. Because democracy is not a spectator sport. Especially now, democracy can be a battlefield, not just in the Ukraine, not just in Iran, not just in Syria or Iraq, but in Arkansas, in Virginia, where I'm from Massachusetts to California to North Carolina. And we have to figure out how to talk to each other and not run away and not blink. And what all of these women do, and in Hollis's and Shin-hee and Sarah's orbits, how through their teaching they empower others to risk themselves, to perfect a craft in a way that furthers conversation, to me is an incalculable benefit, not just to the United States, but to the world. And so when you look at their work, when you go on their websites, when you search them, I beg you, take the time to explore the intricacy of their work, because what that exposes you to are other people's lives, other people's hopes, other people's dreams, and the effort that they took to build the world that we are in now. And so with that, I am enormously grateful for your time, and I'm getting a high sign in the back from Kathleen. Yeah, I'm sorry, you're not mic'd.
I just wanted to make sure we left some time for questions.
Oh, sure. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, what's your name? Hey, Barbara.
Has this have these pieces together? Have they toured around the country? Because, no.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if the National Women's
Museum of Women in the
Women
Arts.
Art has
Okay.
opened back up, but I mean, I think this would be fabulous there. But I guess from listening to Sarah talking about the Trayvon Martin, the family sending in cloth that was made into that fabulous fabric art, and also Shin-hee doing the fabric art that commemorated those that were killed in 9/11, and then also Hollis with her quilts that are so poignant, showing parts of human nature, whatever. I would think, just like you were saying, Sarah, just that tactile sense of fabric. I would think when family members are holding that beloved fabric art, I would think just there's almost like a spark or something from the fingertips that go up to the heart, where they can experience that light and love of their beloved lost soul. And it reminds me of, I'm thinking of years back when I would see the traveling exhibit of the huge quilt for AIDS, the victims of AIDS,
Yeah.
that the families would send in
Yeah.
pieces. And I'm sure that was really emotional for them, that tactile sense of making those squares to go into the quilt. And I mean, that just was so moving to me, and I'm looking forward to this exhibit and seeing y'all's quilts. So I think if y'all had some kind of traveling like the AIDS
I'm
quilt,
going
it
to
would
try
be
to
awesome.
answer that. Okay. They have all had individual shows. They are all massive award-winning artists. I am killing myself to get this exhibit to travel. And there is a profound interest from the National Museum of Women in the Arts. We have some interest from Chicago. We have a force of nature working to get this to go to San Francisco. I am talking to people at Oxford. So what we're trying to do is to get it in as many venues as possible, but we have to have the money to get it to travel. So what I would really encourage you to do is, when you go through the exhibit, if you like it, email us, email the library, say what it means to you, and we can create a book of testimonials that we can do. And in the interest of self-promotion, not for me, even though I'm the one that put it together, please buy the catalog, because there's a catalog to this exhibit that celebrates all of these women, all of the artists, but most importantly of all, celebrates the women and Frederick Douglass who came together to make the world that we are in now. And if you do that, you can show it to people, and the exhibit lives beyond the time that it's here. But I am exceedingly stubborn. Some people say I have 2 speeds, on and dead. And I am determined to get this before as many people, not just in the United States, but in the world as possible. We've had inquiries from London. I had a meeting at Oxford to talk about it before my knee decided it didn't want to be a knee anymore. But I will be mobile in 6 weeks. And I gave all of the women who contributed to this exhibit my word that I would celebrate them wherever I go. And this is step number 1 in this effort. So if you like the exhibit, let us know. If you have ideas and contacts where the exhibit should be, my email is really easy. It's my name at Gmail. Okay. And I will try to help make that happen. But this is a testament to both the skill of these women, the skill of Sarah's students who made the closing quilt. You know, you start with Angelina and Sarah Grimke with the unified fight against abolition and the silence of women, and it goes through Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who was the former president of Liberia and Nobel laureate, who loves the exhibit so much that she now has decided to put quilts, which are central to Africa, as Sarah pointed out, and Madam, as I call her, pulled me into the corner and gave me the history of quilting in Liberia as we walked through to perhaps figure out how some of these could go to Africa too. So we're doing our best. We got one more.
This is going to be a little interesting, but I was anticipating her to be here. She may not see me. She's right there. Okay. So hey, Sarah. This is Russell Williams. Hey. So I anticipated you being here to be able to give you some flowers, but being that you're not here, it's great to see you. Backstory, she and I attended a fellowship together in California in 2017, and we've been friends ever since. And I just wanted to say it's good to see you, and I'm glad to see that you're still doing the work that you love to do. So here's your flowers.
Oh, how
I appreciate you coming through.
cool. Well, that's the perfect way to end it.
Library and, ooh, we on? All right. I'm Jay Barth. I'm the director of the Clinton Presidential Library and Museum. And on behalf of all of us at the Clinton Presidential Center, the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton School, and the Clinton Library, we are thrilled with y'all's being here today. I want us all to thank Sarah, Shin-hee, and Hollis, and of course, our great moderator, Allida. Thank you. Let's thank them for their work today. This is a great exhibit, and this conversation is exactly what this exhibit was to bring about. More conversations about the role of art, the role of social change, and how we create a more just community and world. We do have another program in this series on Saturday. For those of you who can be here, Hollis and Shin-hee will be here to do a deeper dive into their creative process, really from inspiration through execution. And so that's at 10 a.m. in this same space on Saturday. So I urge you to, you can go and register, but just show up if you want to. We would love to have you. I also want to thank again the National Archives Foundation, which has helped to fund this series. And I want to thank everybody on staff here at the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton School, and the Clinton Library for their work on this, especially Kathleen Pate, the education specialist who really has been the herder of cats in this exercise. Again, thank you all so much for spending part of your day here at the Clinton Center, and we hope to see you again very, very soon. Thank you all.